All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of Limitless Evolution podcast. I'm here with Taylor Moore, and we brought on our first ever guest, Mr. Matt Cassano. Matt Cassano is now correct me if I'm wrong, it's the founder or CEO of Ryse HRT, correct?
Correct.
Yes,
Me and my fiance opened it together.
Got it. I didn't know if I had the correct title there or not, but Matt has worked very closely with myself, with Taylor, with our lifestyle clients and our contest prep people. And Matt is somebody in the industry that we've learned a ton from, that we look up to when it comes to functional medicine, different approaches to gut health, optimizing just the different bodily systems. So we thought this would be a great opportunity for not just Taylor and I to ask Matt some direct questions, and for us to learn from him, but also for our audience to learn from him as well, and to hear it from the man himself, somebody who is leaps and bounds beyond our expertise level, so that it can, cross a different barrier of comprehension for some people, because there's only sometimes so much that we can say. And sometimes when it comes from somebody like Matt and with his knowledge base and his experience, it finally clicks in some people. And that's what this podcast is all about, is sharing new perspectives, sharing new opinions. And that's what we want to bring to you guys today. So welcome to episode number 2. Matt, how are you doing, my man?
I'm great. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. I'm excited for this episode.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, man, where you're from, where you grew up, kind of how you got into working in the fitness industry. So tell us a little bit more for the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So my fitness journey kind of started a little bit after high school. I actually first got involved in weight training because I got into MMA and Muay Thai kickboxing. So as I went through that process of, improving my skills in the MMA and kickboxing world, I got more and more into weightlifting, and I kind of got addicted to the size and the strength. And as you guys can imagine, as you get bigger and stronger, you also get worse as a fighter. So like at a point, I was just slow and not agile because I just kept wanting to get bigger and bigger. And I had to kind of make a choice of like, all right, these aren't, flowing perfectly anymore. It seems like I have a bigger passion towards bodybuilding and body composition than I do towards actually fighting. And so I just kind of made that decision to shift my focus full in towards bodybuilding. And I did my first competition. Let's see, I was 21. So it's been a good amount of time. That was like 17, 18 years ago now. Did a couple competitions as I finished college. And then after I graduated college, I got an opportunity with a friend to move up to North Carolina and open a personal training business. That took off very quickly, which ended up turning into opening a full-on conventional gym. So we opened a gym in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in that personal training business is where I first actually connected with competitors. And I was kind of the only one who had any type of, experience in that realm. So they just kind of handed me a bikini competitor and said, Matt can do it. And that was kind of, sink or swim. So, I took on my first bikini competitor having very little knowledge, but had a lot of success with her, which obviously led to more bikini clients coming to me and stuff. And kind of like so many coaches go through, like those first couple of years, you're like the bikini coach. And then finally some men start like trusting you as if like it's so different to coach women and men. So finally men started like giving me the chance to prove myself. And from there, it just kind of, spiraled like most coaches do. You start seeing local success. There was right around the time that Instagram and stuff was taking off. And that started getting me acquainted with, national level competitors all around. And as I, started getting success making pros, I also got involved in the Carolina NPC. So I was actually judging in South Carolina for a little bit. Sold the gym and then just went all in on full-time coaching. And I've had my own health issues for quite a while. My entire family had GI issues growing up. We were kind of that standard American family that just thought all that was normal, and you just take antacids and stuff like that.
Same.
Yeah. And so, I had a lot of issues, but just thought it was my genetics, just thought it was this and that, everything society told us. And then my dad got hit with stage 4 esophagus cancer. And that was kind of a huge wake-up call. He made it about 8 weeks after his diagnosis. And that was like, I need to fix my health. I'm not gonna, that's not gonna be my fate. And as I dug in to research more, I realized the exact cancer he had is all related to gut health, specifically H. pylori and different bacterial infections. And the medications, the antacids and stuff they had him on was just exacerbating the ulcerative colitis and stuff that led to his cancer. And of course, the way the esophagus is connected to everything, it was very easy for that to metastasize into his liver. Once it was into his liver, it was in his entire bloodstream. There's no coming back from that. So that is really my wake-up call. And that honestly was the first shift of like hardcore bodybuilding, that sheep or lion mentality of like, fuck it, full send it. And I really got a new level of respect for health and my own health. And that led to me really digging in, seeking out professional help. I got with a board certified functional doctor in Charlotte. I started doing online courses, Scooby Prep and stuff like that, really expanding my own knowledge as I worked with people to fix myself. And those deep dives, as I'm sure you guys can recollect on yourselves, once you get into those deep health dives, your passion and stuff just changes. And so it was just a snowball effect. And that was around 2018, 2019 that all this shift was happening. And then COVID hit and everything shut down. I lost 90% of my competitors because everything was shut down. So I just dedicated that time to more education, more research, and just really started shifting my focus towards disease prevention and health. And because that was, the big talk during COVID. I didn't really know how much, the fitness was going to come back around. None of us kind of knew what to expect from there. So that just kind of transpired. And then I kept helping more athletes get healthy and stuff, and ended up connecting with some pharmacies who were interested in my skills to help them, and started working with them, got acquainted with the online functional medicine or HRT space, I should say, telemedicine space. And then I realized that they're all in it for profits. None of them are doing proper medical practices. Nobody is using deductive reasoning or common sense. Nobody is even thinking. It's just profits. And some of these clinics, I was astounded by how they approached it of like, here's a laundry list of everything you can order. Let me know. And it's like, that's how my weed dealer used to treat me. And that this is how like clinics are treating people, let me know what you want and how many you want. And I just thought that was crazy. And the more I saw that it just needed to change. And at one point, once I connected with doctors, connected with pharmacy reps, and learned the inner workings, it was actually my fiance, Erin, who was just like, dude, we could do this ourselves. She has a lot of CPA back-end administrative skills. She's ran companies for her dad and stuff in the past. So between the two of us, it was the perfect blend. She could handle all the admin, accounting, CFO stuff. I could handle the clinical direction through my connections and my skill set. And that's kind of what led to it to take off. So now we've been open for just under 3 years. And never look back. It's been an insane journey, and we're growing very, very fast. We're up to about 8,000 patients. It's growing very fast, which we're extremely appreciative of. And it's just a matter of us, staying ahead of the demand, and scaling, bringing on more doctors, more employees, stuff like that. And it's funny, Nick, what you talked about before we started is my exact same situation too. As our businesses grow and we reach more people, we're going to encounter way different cases or way more intense cases than we've ever imagined. And so just like you had mentioned that with your clients, same thing here. It's actually forced me to level up because I have people coming to me with diseases or issues that I never even fathomed. So, now we're specializing in chronic Lyme disease and Epstein-Barr and mold toxicity and these various stealth infections that we didn't really ever anticipate when we first started out. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that we can help, so many people. And it just makes me want to keep okay, what else can I learn? Who else can I help? And keep going up from there. So nowadays it's just balancing like helping and then continuing education as I help, similar to you guys, run into something new, dive into this, continue my education, help that person. And obviously in the past year, I saw a void in the supplement world too. There's a lot of supplement companies out there, but none of them just really like hit it, just get you what you need, no bullshit, no fillers, and not this like, oh, buy 10 products when you could just buy one product. And so that's kind of what led to the start of Pure Factor. And as you guys know, Austin's also an owner in that with me. So that's our goal, is formulate those products so we can actually provide helpful things for athletes and Gen Pop.
I remember about, it was probably like 6 years ago now, before I started coaching, before I ever did a contest prep or anything, a very prominent just supplement company came on the market, great formulations. And then just like somebody like myself and like Taylor, we nerd over formulations of health supplements, like more than performance supplements, like pre-workouts,
Sure.
And just like over the years, it's a shame seeing the formulations just decrease. And like, I've got receipts, man. I've got screenshots from 6 years ago and what it's at now. And it's like, none of these things I introduce to any of my clients anymore. Cause like, hey, when it was 20 different ingredients with great doses, now it's down to 12 and the price is the same. And they just want to have a profit margin just because they're in big box stores now.
Right.
It really is irritating because then you start to realize, like you said, the pharmacies were in it for profit. Bro, most people don't realize that, okay, yeah, every business, the goal is to make money.
Cool.
But of that, it's like somebody's like, Nick, why are you a coach? Why are you in business? It's for me to have a solution to somebody's problem.
Yeah.
That's why I stay in business. You know what I'm saying? And that people don't think about that when it comes to supplement companies. They just want to be taking the same supplements that their favorite bodybuilder is sponsored by to say that they're a team.
Whatever they see on TikTok Shop.
Exactly.
There's an emotional component to brand loyalty. Some people are in it for all the wrong reasons. It's like, I don't even know why I take this product, but that's been our goal, transparency and, just basically no competition when it comes down to those formulations. And you guys know this, the thing about common sense is it's not that common. And so, like, whether we're talking medical, bodybuilding, fitness, supplements, it's just like you can sometimes look at something and be like, why the fuck did they do this? And why didn't they do this? Like, why is this missing this? And I've seen the same thing. It's like, okay, you guys have actually brought down this formula over the years, but brought up the price. Like, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's all just been very, inquisitive to all of us, myself, Austin, and the other owner, Patrick. I don't know if you guys know or follow Patrick, but Patrick is the owner of All Pro Nutrition in Raleigh, North Carolina. So he owns.
Yes, I know exactly that.
And he's also a former 212 IFBB pro. So he was repping brands back when,
Muscle
growth
tech.
hormones were legal.
Oh yeah.
You know, he was repping real Superdrol and stuff, the good stuff. So we all kind of have our different niches. You know, Patrick's been around for a long time, knows all the bullshit in terms of supplement manufacturing and testing raw ingredients and handling all that. He's actually saved us from a few sketchy situations. And then me and Austin just know, for the most part, the voids in the industry. And
Yeah.
you know, analyzing past manufacturers or brands and just knowing like we can do this better. And at the end of the day, I think the difference with us three is Pure Factor is not our primary business. So it's easier for us to not prioritize profits. We're not desperate. You know, it's just like, let's just do banger products that we can confidently put out to our people and use in our own day-to-day practices. And everything else will just work out from there. You know?
For sure. I wanna rewind a little bit, Matt.
Yeah.
First off, it's so crazy how, like, even though, you know, age-wise, you know, Nick and I are 24 and 25, but we're all like, I feel like things are so, it's such a small world how we relate to each other. Like, those of you who don't know, I live in Matt's house, actually. It's funny, he and I, you know, I bought my Corvette or whatever, and just obviously we all know this, but just telling for the people watching, I bought my Corvette and like joined a Facebook group. I was living in Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, and saw that Matt had posted in there. Obviously I knew who Matt was, you know, like from the bodybuilding, the coaching industry, stuff like that, Rise, all of that. But he had made a post, and then like we had started chatting on through Facebook Messenger, and then I had told him, you know, I was looking to move to Wilmington, and he was, you know, you had just moved to Florida not too long ago, and then you were Airbnb in your house, and then I had told him how we were looking for a place to rent, and then he was like, hey man, you know, would you be interested in renting our house? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. We went and looked at it, and it was like from there. So it's really funny how all this works. And even going back to what you were saying at the beginning about your dad, or overall just your family. So my mom, it's funny, like this is a conversation you and I could probably have off of the podcast as well, because it could take a lot of time. But my mom has had a complete GI reconstruction surgery. She had a foot and a half of her small intestine taken out. She has one kidney, like very, very, you know, health issues have been prominent. She was actually in the hospital last week in Myrtle Beach for 4 days because they did a biopsy on her esophagus, because they're saying that there's some scar tissue buildup that they're not sure of what exactly it is. But she's the same way. It's like, you know, instead of like all the issues she's had and everything, it's like, let's not get to the root cause of it. Let's just throw some omeprazole at it and see if we can just stop your acid reflux from that. And it's like, you know, I know like my mom, and it was probably like with your dad, how you dove into it all. Like that was the primary root of me diving into gut issues and stuff like that 2.5 years ago. Because before that, you know, I was just coaching bodybuilders. Like I didn't care about the gut health stuff. But it's just cool how like unfortunate circumstances, obviously, but like we can relate on even deeper levels than just the surface level stuff that we do. And even moving, you know, further into that, what you guys were just saying about like, you know, the market and like common sense isn't common. I was watching a podcast yesterday and of Alex Hormozi and Chris Williamson. I'm not sure if you guys seen the new one that came out yet or not, but Alex Hormozi said, I have it right here because I was going to post it on my Instagram story today. He said, so many people are afraid of changing their mind when most of their beliefs aren't theirs to begin with. And it's like everyone in the coaching industry, like just in general in today's society, I feel like they're just all regurgitating information. So that's why common sense isn't common. It's just because like it's not their sense to begin with. It's not, they don't know why they're saying what they're saying, and it's like that goes for, you know, coaching and everything across the board. So I have a question for you. What do you feel like do you feel like there's a big correlation in, like you said, you started the clinic and everything like that because you saw people were just like, hey, here's a laundry list of things, you know, here. Do you feel like there's a big correlation in the coaching industry and the you know, the clinics and stuff like that, as far as like people are just solely worried about profits? They're not worried about actually solving the issues and like I guess my main question here is to summarize it is like, do you feel like, because obviously Nick and I see this in the coaching industry and you have as well, like people are so worried about profits, they're not worried about actually serving their clients. Do you feel like there's a correlation there outside of coaching too, like within the functional health in the clinics and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's been kind of an interesting shift just in recent years that like it's exacerbated. And so nowadays, I'm sure you guys are all seeing it. We're probably all seeing the same things through our algorithms. Nowadays, there's this push towards coaching coaches, but it's not coaching coaches to be better coaches. It's coaching coaches to make more money. And my thing has always been, well, if you're a better coach, you're going to make more money, so just keep servicing clients and having a great report card of success. The clients are going to come. To my own detriment, I was very behind the times in terms of leveraging social media for my business. It took me 10 years to be a popular coach because I truly believed like, no, I'm not going to market. I'm never going to do discounts. I'm never going to do sales. People are going to come to me because of what I put on stage, point blank period. I could have probably been a way more popular coach 5 years faster if I went about it differently. But I firmly believe that my report card is what's going to get me clients, and proof is in the pudding. And so, I see that shift, and I want coaches, up and coming coaches, to be cautious with that because, okay, great, you can get 150 clients, but can you actually provide them a good service? Can you actually, whether it's winning a show, getting healthy, or just getting into the best shape of their lives, can you actually do this, or are you more so just a salesman? And it's like, we gotta separate those. I wholeheartedly see where new coaches need to leverage some type of marketing to get their name out and stuff. No problems with that. But you better be producing good results. I better see some solid transformations, solid testimonials. And I just feel like everyone needs to be cautious with this demand to be like a 7-figure person. Like that's like the new thing. 7-figure this, 7-figure that. And it's just like, guys, let's just be successful at our skill set and climb slowly but surely. I think if everyone focuses on the end goal, they're going to completely miss what's right in front of them, servicing their clients.
It's so funny you say this, man. Because for one, I was going to ask you this question already, and you're kind of already answering it. But I am in the process, and by no means do I have ever said I'm an expert, within the coaching, but in comparison to someone with your knowledge level, but I do know like way more than most coaches out here do, and I'm actually in the process of kind of starting up a business now. I haven't really announced this yet, but Blake Fulcher and I are starting a business. He's really good at business, really good at sales, like marketing, all of that stuff. And I would like to say that I have a really good knowledge of when it comes to coaching. So he and I sat down and we were like, man, like you're aware of like AIA and all of these like business coaching, things. And I told him, I was like, man, like in the fitness industry, there's so many of these business coaches like, oh, I can get you to 10 grand a month. I can get you to 20 grand a month, 50 grand a month. But it's like, where is the foundation of the knowledge to that it takes to do that? So he and I actually have a business in the works right now. We have a couple people in it. We haven't made a single post about it because I'm the same way with this business as I am coaching. Like until you have results, I don't think that you should be marketing anything. But like our business is the foundation is like, okay, I'm going to coach the educational side of things, like how to be a good coach, how to produce results, how to actually take care of your clients. And then also we have within that as well, okay, now once you've learned this, part 2 is, okay, well, here's how to market. Here's how to do social media content. Here's how to run ads. Here's how to do all of that. And I think that has a lot of potential within today's space just because, like you said, nobody teaches how to actually be a good coach. And I think that's the missing piece between growing and not. So what advice would you give this, like, let's just say your 25-year-old self of, where's that fine line of like, do you take a certain amount of years to grow your knowledge base, produce results, etc., before you start marketing, or is there kind of like a intermingling of those that you should do along the way?
That's a great question. So I feel like a lot of those actions can somewhat happen simultaneously, depending on how good the coach is at multitasking and compartmentalizing things.
Yeah.
Some of us are way better at excelling at 5 things at once, and some people just need to kind of stay on target. I think it also depends on your baseline skill set starting out. So, like, if you've already prepped some people and stuff, you may be able to start accumulating clients. But like we've talked about, if you start taking off, you're going to start meeting a lot of different clients with a lot of different needs, and you kind of want that skill beforehand, not after the fact.
Yep.
I think Austin's a great example of a great mentorship, because he tackles or troubleshoots cases with you as you go through them. So you're learning hands-on. We all know, like, you don't become a great coach reading something from a book. Like, great, you have scientific knowledge or medical knowledge, but can you apply it? Do you have the nuance of 2 different people responding completely different to a peptide or a food? So learning the nuances as you go through training, I think, is always the best. But you're never going to know what you need to know until you get the clients.
Until you do it. Yeah.
So it's like, you don't know till you know. But I do think there's a lot of ways to get clients before investing into meta ads and stuff like that.
Yes.
We've all been coaches prior to meta ads. So it's like, we know we can do it. We've all been successful coaches for years. Meta ads are very new to the coaching world. So there's a lot of ways to accomplish it. I just think patience is key. If you're just getting into coaching, why are you bringing up 7 figures? Like, that shouldn't even be 6 figures shouldn't be a discussion.
Yeah.
Get 10 fucking clients successful, and then, think about the next step. But handle 10 clients consistently. Be good about the speed of your responses. Be good about all those things. Have all those ducks in a row. Make sure that you're presenting or packaging your services well. Is this just a kind of, unprofessional text conversation here and there where you actually send them their program in an iPhone note? I've seen that. So it's like,
me too.
like, what are you charging? What's the value of what you're giving? Work on all those things first. Become as efficient as possible and as skilled as possible in your brand, then scale. It's the same idea with any business. If I opened up the clinic and right away was like, I'm going to invest so much into marketing, we would have been fucked. Set that
I agree with you.
build on that foundation, and then scale is my opinion.
And I'm glad you say that, because, like, Nick and I kind of in the same boat with this. Like, me, for example, we've been coaching about the same time, but myself, for example, like, I've been coaching for 4.5 years now. Like, I started coaching very early in my, like, most people don't start coaching at 20 years old like I did. So, like, I would like to say I'm ahead of the game a little bit, but, like, I've been coaching for 4.5 years now, and I just learned what a meta ad was in January of this year. Like, I'm just now getting a CRM system built out. I'm just now, I've been super organized, but, like, just now getting things kind of automated in a sense. It's like, that was and that's why I wanted to ask the question, because I was gonna, I just wanted your opinion on, like, do you think it's beneficial to play the long game or grow? Like, obviously there's playing the long game is still growing, but, like, the way I just feel like it's so saturated now with, like, oh, I need to scale, and not I need to be a good coach and then scale. So
You can't automate systems that aren't in place.
Yeah.
You have to
you
in
can't.
place first before you automate them. I think everyone's just way too impatient and jumping the gun. And we see this in bodybuilding. It's the same idea. It's like, you get a novice competitor who's never even witnessed a show live, but now they're telling you they want to be Mr. or Miss Olympia. You've never even been to a show, you know? And now you're talking about
Yeah.
these stacks that XYZ did on YouTube and stuff. You're getting way ahead of yourselves, bro.
Yep.
You know, it's
Yep.
the same idea with business.
100%.
We all want to make money, but let's not get ahead of ourselves.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I see too, and which is just entering the industry, is, you know, me and Taylor kind of talked about this on our last podcast, our last episode. When we're going to these national shows, Taylor and I recognize a lot of people, and sometimes we don't recognize a lot of people, and that there's so many coaches, and there's so many great coaches in the industry, but Taylor and I have noticed, like, hey, sometimes the people that are producing the most are the people that we're seeing the most at these shows, the people that are caring the most about their clients, the people that are living in an Airbnb with their clients through peak week, or their clients living with them through a certain portion of their people, like Taylor and I, and like yourself, Matt, that have gotten to the levels that we're at, but we're also still learning, and we were reaching new rungs of the ladder.
Yep.
If we reverse to our early years, dude, I was coaching completely for free, and I didn't even want to call myself an online coach for my first year.
Yeah.
Because I knew from a very early on, from an early age, I knew that knowledge is not power. Knowledge with the proper application is power.
Absolutely.
And if I'm going to be just like every other person out there that does their first show, takes third place in novice, or takes first in their class because of shitty competition, and then the next day they're marketing their coaching for bodybuilding coaching, or sign up for a free health and fitness consultation link in my bio, just because they maybe overcame a few obstacles that they never had to do in the past. I was like, yo, if I start charging people before I even have results of anybody, then I'm going to be like one of those people online just spouting that bullshit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
where we see people in their bios on Instagram, transformation specialist, transformation expert, but we scroll through their page and they don't have a single transformation. I'm like, you're a fraud. I'm never going to trust you. And I know some of these people. And I'm like, I don't associate with myself with them, because I'm like, how can you feel right by taking somebody's, let's not even talk about bodybuilding or contest prep, just by general health coaching? How can you feel right by taking somebody's health into your hands when you have no idea how to deal with certain scenarios? You have no idea like how to deal with, hey, this person has substance abuse, and they're dealing with XYZ things on top of dealing with trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
How are you going to deal with that as a coach?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why we wanted to bring you on, Matt, is because we see, at least I speaking for myself here, and I think Taylor can corroborate this, but we see you as an older version of ourselves.
Sure.
And something that we really look up to, and how your approach to this is very inspiring, but it's also changing the industry. So, I mean, your responses, Matt, have been spot on.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
For sure.
I mean, I align with you guys 100%. And you just kind of touched on this. People don't respect that there is a level of danger offering coaching that you're not qualified to offer. We're not even
Or mentoring.
PEDs. We're even just talking about simple exercise and nutrition. There's been some dangerous diets that I've seen. You know, I had nothing to do with this client. It was like sent from a friend type of deal. But I knew a girl who was programmed bone broth instead of food in peak week because she was retaining so much water. So literally, instead of meals, she just got a cup of bone broth. And that was a bikini girl in Charlotte. And so
she's retaining so much water, so I'm going to give her sodium-filled liquids.
Yeah, really weird choices. And it obviously made no sense. But like there's dangers to this. And I don't mean to say like, don't trust coaches or anything, but I just think that everyone's in this mood or mode lately of like, how can I make money? How can I capitalize on this skill set? Whether that skill set is TikTok dancing, coaching, making meals in front of a camera. Everyone's looking for a side gig or or capitalizing on something to make themselves special. And obviously, this is related to social media and the fact that we're watching other people make millions doing nothing, and it's like, I can do that. And it's a weird realm we're in, and I think we need to separate the, for lack of a better word, snake oil salesmen, influencers from real life coaches who sleep and breathe this and passionately care for their clients, but yeah, I mean, I think you guys have the absolute right mentality, and that's why it's going so smoothly for you both in terms of business.
For sure. And it's funny because like I said, I just started running meta ads, and I have one ad going on my page that's like a follower ad, and I have all these people commenting. I'm sure you guys have seen it, but I have all these people commenting like, this guy, how can you take advice from this guy when he looks like this? Or who have you ever coached? What rep? And I'll say I am the coach who did one show and then became a coach. I've still only done 2 shows up until this day, but it's like, I spent a year and a half, like my first show, I basically prepped myself because I had a horrible coaching experience. And I spent, that a year and a half of just engulfing myself into every possible thing that I could learn from,
Sure.
Every book I could get, I was in college obviously for exercise science, like, every textbook I could get. I did all of that and still did not promote myself as a coach. Like my best friend, Parker, who I'm prepping for USA's right now, came to me and said, "Hey, I know you know what you're talking about. Like, I want to do a show. Will you prep me for it?" And I was straight up with him. "Hey, man, like, I've never prepped anyone before. We can try, but I'm not going to charge you, whatever." And, now he's about to step on stage in open bodybuilding for his pro card at USA's. And, even from then, like, I was coaching people for like $50 a month or something while I was still bouncing in college and stuff like that. So like, sure, I am the coach that did one show and then became a coach, but like also that level of passion, like you said, the passion, the research that I've done, I added it up, man. I spent like almost $100,000 just in mentoring.
Yeah.
Like that's what most people spend to go to college.
Sure.
And I've spent on top of college and mentoring. So like, yeah, I think that I get it. Like with social media, it is hard to differentiate who's real and who's not, but like, you can also, I feel like, just take a look through somebody's page and tell.
During my
we
contest,
both know that your physique does not.
No, it doesn't. No,
Name a
no.
single successful Olympian that's also a successful coach. Not
Yep. Yeah.
The best
Yeah.
bodies in this sport are the genetic freaks, not the hyper educated people. In fact, the non-genetic freaks tend to be way more educated because they had to actually troubleshoot their way to progress instead of like looking at a dumbbell and having 26-inch arms,
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
once I learned that I was like 25 and seeing like a 17-year-old kid in Africa who's like twice as strong as me and shredded, I was just like, all right, fuck, I'm never going to be successful at this sport. That was like a very early recognized for me that I just needed to focus on coaching and not competing because it was a waste of time. I do think there's validity to be able to say like, look, it's kind of wrong to put someone through the suffering of prep if you yourself haven't experienced it. I do believe there's validity there that you need to be able to say, I've been there too. I know what you're going through. Same thing with health protocols, But to say like, because you never made it to the national level or you never made it that far, I don't trust you as a coach, ridiculous,
Yeah.
In fact, again, if someone's still actively competing, how much time can they truly dedicate to coaching? If they're a serious pro, they don't care about your local NBC show, bro. Like we got to be realistic with this stuff.
100%. I totally agree with that, man.
Let's dive into the fun stuff.
Yeah, dude, this first 30 minutes of the podcast is absolutely fire.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We're going to start off with something pretty cool. Something that we haven't really seen on any other podcast or heard people talk about. Potentially just things that are controversial in the industry. But I just want to dive right into PEDs and peptides.
Hey boys,
this year.
I'm gonna go turn the temperature up in this house because I'm freezing.
Yeah, you're good, man. Especially this year, there has been with a prominent coach in the industry that's no longer coaching. You could probably, I mean, people listening, you too, Matt, you could probably who know who I'm talking about. But the rumors about the compound DNP. Now, there's been something that's been surfacing on the not the internet, but surfacing in the PED market and the peptide market called BAM15.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we wanted to hear your opinion on DNP versus BAM15, your opinion on each of their use in bodybuilding, but is BAM15 an actual mitochondrial uncoupler as what DNP has been told it is? Like, is there, what's the similarities, what's the differences, or what's the application of both of them? We just want to know your opinion.
So I might disappoint you guys. I have not done a ton of research about BAM15. I'm aware of it, and I'm aware that it's been touted as, an uncoupler, mitochondrial uncoupler, similar to DNP, similar mechanisms of actions, but it hasn't yet made it to like an FDA approval to a point where we can access it at the clinic. And so, just being totally honest, I haven't dove into it yet, since we can't access it and utilize it with patients. As far as DNP, it might surprise you guys. I have an open mind to most drugs. I believe that most drugs can have a place and be utilized responsibly. Whether we're talking about GLP-1's, DNP, Anavar, all of them can have their place. I just think that every drug, whether we're talking fitness or just healthcare, every drug is overused and abused. And I think there's a big difference between drug use and drug abuse. And unfortunately, in bodybuilding, there's no better example of the difference between use and abuse. So
I literally have a reel that I just made, and the hook for it is, if PEDs are so bad, like obviously this is a engagement thing, but if steroids are so bad for you, then why are they prescribed? There's a difference between use and abuse. Literally word for word, I have a reel that already scheduled to post tomorrow on that. So it's so funny you say that.
Yeah. And so, I have leveraged DNP with athletes, back in the day who wanted to leverage it. They were interested. They liked the idea of manipulating as many pathways possible to see results. We've leveraged microdosing Humalog with L-carnitine and growth hormone for pre-fasted cardio and stuff like that. We would do a bunch of different things that would be considered, risky, but they're not understanding that we're paying attention to every detail. The nutrition is strategized. The natural supplement support is strategized and stuff like that. So what I will say, hindsight is 2020. Looking back, the people who benefited the most from DNP usage already had metabolic dysfunction that was just undiagnosed. Hence why they needed the DNP. Everyone acts like DNP, you can just sit on the couch and see results. That's not my experience with most people, maybe healthy people, but the people we were all utilizing it for one reason or another already had metabolic deficiencies, which is why we chose to leverage it. So, looking back, those were the people who benefited the most. The downside is, it does increase oxidative stress. And in doing so, it can potentially raise cortisol. It can potentially raise reverse T3, blunting metabolic function. So that's where the thyroid component comes in, is the oxidative stress and elevated reverse T3. But then we also have to think about what else is going on in that time period of leveraging DNP. Most likely a good amount of cardio, most likely other PEDs, most likely intense training to hold on to that muscle. So all these things are accumulating oxidative stress. It's not so much one component, it's the accumulation of components. And I say that because if you know all these things in advance, you can limit that oxidative stress. Yep. For example, where I did see the best results in leveraging DNP with a patient, with a client back then, would be at the very start of a fat loss phase when calories were very high, Other drugs were very low. They weren't doing cardio. All those other aspects were out of the equation. And I always felt that the best results with DNP were on high carbs, lower fats. That's going to be towards the start of a fat loss phase. So we're basically leveraging it where the food is high, metabolism is high, oxidative stress is low, toxic load is low. You don't need thyroid support. You don't need anything. And you're basically like doing a pre-fat loss phase, you know?
I love this. I love this explanation, man. I'll be completely transparent. This is a very informal podcast. I don't care. I'm honest. I have used DNP 2 or 3 times. And the difference, people hear DNP and they're like, oh, like it's the same thing with insulin. I feel like, it's like there is a difference between use and abuse. If you abuse insulin, you will die.
Sure.
If you abuse DNP, you could die. Like it's just, if you run 6 grams of test, there's some consequences that are going to come from that. If you chug 20 coffees, like you might have a heart attack.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a difference between people who are like, they hear DNP and they're like, oh, I could die from it. It's like, yeah, if you're taking 600, 800 milligrams daily, yeah, like at the end of a fat loss phase, you have everything else going. And I think it's so funny. My application with that is exactly what you just said. It is at the beginning of a fat loss phase, like, okay, we are 20 weeks out and we know that you have far more than 20 weeks worth of fat to lose.
Exactly.
So like, let's get ahead before all of these other things come into place.
Exactly.
And we're not running 400 to 800 milligrams a day. It's like 200 milligrams a day, 200 milligrams every other day.
Exactly.
I've seen, like I did that with myself. And honestly, man, I never picked up the oxidative stress from DNP. Maybe it was just because everything else was in place, but like, I thought that, it was perfectly fine. I didn't get super like, when I towards the end of it, I did, hot and sweaty and stuff like that. But like, that's just kind of what comes from it. But yeah, that's me and Nick were.
Where you have to take the DNP out when you introduce thyroid support at all?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like any responsible coach is whenever they apply something new, you're then paying attention to feedback. It's not just like, okay, take this and we'll talk in a month. Like when I applied DNP, I'm like, okay, now we're starting check-ins every 48 hours because I want to analyze your body's response and make sure we're making very smart choices. So yeah, if they had negative responses, if we started seeing all the signs of oxidative stress come up and cortisol come up, thyroid decline, we would potentially pull it. At some point, there could be an argument towards leveraging a little bit of T3 to blunt that reverse T3. So, there's different cases for different needs. But, a big thing is, like you guys brought up, the lethal dose. Like, there's a big difference between 200 and 1,000. And
Yes.
what catches most people up in, whether we're talking DNP or other drugs, is I don't feel it. And so, like, they don't think about the half-life and the fact that it's
And the compounding effect
in your body.
Yes.
So it's like, I don't feel it. I'm going to do 400. I don't feel it. I'm going to do 600. Now you have 1,200 in your system, dude. And now and now you're kind of fucked unless your body.
Now you better find an ice bath.
Yeah. And so,
and really,
I think it should never be used without proper guidance and someone paying attention to feedback in the background. It's not something that you just fucking run, and it is a limited time, like we've all said. 4 to 6 weeks start of a phase, and then shift into a different phase once you've whatever it is cleared out the 10 pounds, the 12 pounds that you were hoping to get from it. Maybe even, there's been times where I did a small health cleanup phase post DNP and then rolled into the rest of their prep.
I was about to say my favorite is like 4 weeks, get some fat off, diet down a little bit, and then okay, now let's pull back a little bit. And even you could even do this before drugs are coming in, like injectable type of drugs are coming in. Like now we go into this little like 2 to 4 week kind of pullback phase where now drugs are being reintroduced, training is coming back into place, you're dropping off stress, any oxidative stress you did build up from the DNP, and now you spend that little time doing that, and then now you just go into a normal prep, but you're way ahead of where you would have been.
Yeah.
That's I like that approach, and that's an approach that most people don't even realize. They hear DNP, they think of, oh, I've heard this was made for explosives, that's got to be super strong, or they hear it was never made pharmaceutically, so you don't know how accurate it's going to be dosed from your dealer. Going into my next question, because personally, I'll be transparent, I've never personally used DNP myself, or I've never used it with a client. That's not because I'm not open-minded to it. It's just because I haven't learned from the correct people. I haven't learned from practical application, and I'm not going to risk somebody's health or my own health if I don't know what you guys are saying here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I see most, underground labs or places in China selling DNP, and it's like 200 milligram servings. And we've been mostly talking about 200 milligram servings today and going up by 200 milligram increments. Have you found that 200 milligram spot to be kind of like the hypothetical minimum stimulating threshold? Or, back when you did use it, did you find success using, 50 milligrams every day, 100 milligrams every other day? Or was it usually a start around 200 milligrams?
Great question. So the hindrance was getting different dosage options encapsulated, right? So the limitations was around sourcing. To answer your question, 200 milligrams is definitely not the minimal effective dose. I would say minimal effective dose is as low as 50 milligrams a day. I've leveraged 200 every other day. At one point, and granted, it has been easily 5 years since I've, leveraged DNP. But at one point down the line, I did find a source that offered hundreds. So I would try, 100 every other day or 100 daily. I would say 200 is the kind of standard dose where you can be confident they're going to see results. But you could always start less and, give it time and see if it works. No harm in doing that. The thing is, too, I think, I used it for a few different applications. You can even use it in recomp scenarios because it does actually help with glucose uptake into the muscles. So at a low dose, improving insulin sensitivity and leveraging it with a couple other low dose compounds, you could potentially be burning fat and building muscle simultaneously, especially if you're not doing the cardio, you're not in a deficit, you're not doing all those other stressors on the body and allowing for recovery to happen. I would say the biggest mistake anyone makes is when I hear, hey, I'm 4 to 6 weeks out of a show, body's ready,
and I'm behind.
I'm thinking about throwing in DNP. And I'm like, fuck no, do not do that. If your body is already stubborn, stress is already high, that is not going to go well.
Yep, 100%. I agree with you. Hey, boys, hey, Matt, how much time do you have? Because I feel like we're at 52 minutes and there's so much stuff to talk about. Are you good?
I have another 30 minutes if you guys do.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep.
That's so going into our next question, man, because that was fantastic, dude. That's something that we both really wanted to talk about. We really wanted to cover.
Sure. I am interested in Band 15. I just need to dedicate time to looking into it more. And, with the new administration being very open-minded to FDA approval of peptides, I think we're going to see a lot more things become available in the next year. And so I'm excited about new peptides and stuff like that coming available.
Absolutely, man. And speaking of new peptides, have you done much research on SLU and MOTS-C?
More on MOTS-C than SLU.
I personally love MOTS-C. I've used it with myself. I've used it with many clients, competitors. I'll deploy MOTS-C over Clen any day.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, honestly, I could see MOTS-C being argued as more effective than DNP for a couple of reasons. The downside to MOTS-C, specifically coming from the clinic, is price point. MOTS-C is not a cheap peptide. I've never looked at, its availability on peptide sites and stuff, but through the clinic, it's going to run you a couple $100 a month, But it's one of those similar things like we just talked about with its ability to improve insulin sensitivity and assist with mitochondrial function. It's something that can be leveraged short term at the beginning, get someone really good results, and then you kind of move on from it. If you can't afford it, if you can keep affording it, great. But if you're
Yeah,
limited,
for sure.
still pack a punch even for just 4 to 6 weeks.
I haven't experienced any oxidative stress increases from MOTS-C,
Yeah.
especially when in the depths of prep. I just had one of my athletes. He competed. Well, he actually was being guided by somebody else for Junior USA's. Came to me right after and just like, hey, I just want to switch over to you. I didn't even know he was just a fan. He was a follower of mine. And I just met him at the show. So we introduced MOTS-C literally about 3 days ago, and already a pretty significant difference in how he feels throughout the day,
Wow.
visually as well. And that's just within 3 days. And what we're doing, we start off the first day just doing a 0.5 milligram, and then we went to a full milligram every day, and it's working wonders. I mean, I don't want to say it's all fat, but he's visually tightened up.
Yeah.
Tremendously. He's down 4 pounds in 3 days, and his food has remained the same. Cardio has been lowered.
Wow.
Because I didn't want to jack up his cardio on top of adding MOTS-C in case we would have seen oxidative stress. Because it's one of those things where there's still research that needs to be done with it.
Absolutely.
But I've seen, even for my lifestyle clients, man, MOTS-C has been doing wonderful things.
Yeah.
So I haven't personally used MOTS-C, but I absolutely love SLU. I've seen crazy results with that. What's Matt, maybe you can explain kind of the difference there, or like which one, you maybe would prefer, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely a little bit different. And again, being totally honest, SLU's a little new to me. So I don't have in-depth, explanations of mechanism of action of stuff. But there's definitely differences. With MOTS-C, the big benefit outside of the mitochondrial benefits is insulin sensitivity. And it's basically driving more glucose to your brain and muscles, which then allows for more endurance, better mood, better energy, more endurance, and less fat storage. And we have to think, especially nowadays, insulin resistance is pretty common for a lot of different reasons. There's a good amount of inflammation and water retention from insulin resistance. Inflammation causes insulin resistance, but then it becomes a cycle, a cyclical effect. So I'm sure some of those 4 pounds is literally water, dropping off that person too, and just being much more metabolically efficient. That's really where I see MOTS-C shine, is the fat loss component, improving insulin sensitivity, but also the surge of like energy and endurance that you have. Like, it really does help you be a better athlete, which is different than just a fat loss drug. But SLU is similar. I don't think it has the same actions specifically on terms of glucose and insulin, but in terms of exercise mimetic and the fact that you're getting all the same benefits in terms of metabolic function, energy, mood, and helping with protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown, which is just going to help with muscle development. So it's SLU is by far one of the most popular peptides of 2025, I would say. We have tons of patients utilizing it, whether they be athletes or just, lifestyle clients. The great thing about SLU is like no side effects outside of
That's what I was going to say.
Like sweating a little bit more and being hot. I haven't heard a single side effect.
I've noticed one thing with SLU. So my personal experience with SLU stems back to after I got my pro card last year. It was coming out of prep because I'd heard about it during prep. I was doing research about it, and I was using it with some of my clients, but I didn't introduce it for myself because I didn't want to just introduce something without my coach knowing. And we were already on such a great path. We were like, okay, let's just keep plugging away. Everything's clicking. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. I started using SLU and the post show, and it was the post show feeling of like, we were tapering off thyroid support. And it was the, energy was getting low, even though food was coming up. I kind of felt like shit in the gym because, energy's coming back. My body's not 5% body fat anymore.
Right.
My joints are feeling different. So I started utilizing it in that post-show phase. And the energy with the SLU was the biggest thing for me that I noticed. And I didn't notice much at 200 micrograms daily.
Yeah.
I started noticing more around 1,000 micrograms.
Yeah.
And I started noticing more when I was getting up into milligram dosages.
Yeah.
And not in the 200 micrograms. So when I see people swear by SLU and they're like, yeah, dude, I take 100 micrograms morning and night or whatever. I'm like, that's all placebo, bro. It's, you got to get into the milligram dosages. I just started to notice when I was taking 1,000 micrograms. So that's one thing with SLU. And what I've learned and how I've researched it comparable to MOTS-C. MOTS-C is the main benefits are what you said, Matt, with the insulin and the brain energy and the potential uncoupling effects of the mitochondria. But with SLU, from what I've researched, it's more of like, okay, we're going to start to quote unquote upregulate the efficiency of the mitochondria. That's kind of, is that kind of correct?
That's what I've read too. Yeah. So exactly. Yeah. Same thing. And dosage wise, I agree with you. So we have two options available at the clinic: 100 micrograms and 250 micrograms. And I can tell from personal experience and my fiance Erin, 500 was like, yeah, I'm hot. I'm feeling this. Of course,
that's what
pharmaceutical and peptide companies, there's a variance there. I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, what we feel from the pharmacy 500, probably what most people would feel from 1,000 from a peptide. Same thing with like BPC. I always used to get BPC from like Amino Asylum and stuff. Erin used to love it, but as soon as we got pharmaceutical BPC, she was like, I only need to do a third of what I used to do. So I probably agree with you. If it's pharmaceutical, probably 500 is your minimum to like feel it. 1,000 a gram probably from a peptide site is if you are really looking for effects, that's part of what we're looking at dosage wise.
Yeah, for sure. And something that I have like noticed too is like I said, I haven't used the MOTS-C and I know that there's more probably insulin sensitivity effects when it comes to the MOTS-C than it is SLU, but the combo that has really pushed my athletes and myself, ahead as far as that goes is retatrutide with SLU.
Absolutely.
So like that's where you're getting, across the board the whole horizon of benefits, in my opinion.
Let's get into that right off the bat, man. Let's start talking about some GLP-1s and Reta. So for the audience, I feel like people don't really even know what a GLP-1 is, and because most people just think of Ozempic.
Yeah.
So can you explain what glucagon-like peptide actually is?
Yeah.
For like the audience watching, because it's completely misunderstood, or it's just people just don't know what that abbreviation means. And then after just like kind of breaking that down, in your opinion, what's your opinion on Reta versus other GLPs?
So I've used a couple myself, and I've used obviously all of them with different patients. I would say my personal favorite is still tirzepatide. I didn't notice much difference when I tried retatrutide. But I do know there are differences. There's more effects on glucagon. There's more effects on neurotransmitters. So essentially helping people who may have cravings or different things going on, I can see how retatrutide might be more beneficial. I think it all just really depends on the individual's needs analysis, what they are specifically looking to leverage this for. I think the biggest misunderstanding with a lot of these conversations is the concept of like this being a drug versus a natural occurring amino acid in our bodies. So it's thought every day or taught about every day as the fat loss drug. And there's all these side effects to the drug, but they're not recognizing that we all have GLP-1s present in our gut. This is
in our body.
an amino acid produced in the GI tract that helps with, leptin, ghrelin, satiability, and stuff like that. And it also helps with liver function and clearing out excess glucose. There can be a lot of reasons as to why someone might be GLP deficient. It could be their dietary choices. It could be their lifestyle choices, their gut health. You know, what we're seeing is a lot of these people who benefit from GLP-1s already have internal dysfunction, hence why they need the GLP-1s, you know? But what most people don't think about is the mechanism of action and how that can transpire to possible side effects. All people think about is drug side effects. You know, they're not understanding the action. So the main action of all GLP-1s is sending a signal to slow gastric emptying, which then slows or reduces appetite and cravings. So that's the main benefit, is it's slowing gastric emptying, which slows motility and digestion enough to hinder appetite and cravings. And we see this hit from a few different standpoints. There's a lot of research showing that GLP-1s are now used for addiction. And it's actually helped a ton of people get away from alcohol and stuff like that, just because it's the dopamine and it's that appetite or craving situation. But in reducing appetite, people eat less, thus go into a caloric deficit, and thus lose weight. You know, that's the main thing. The other aspect is it does help clear excess glucose from the liver. So if we have a sluggish liver or gallbladder, if we are a bit insulin resistant, this is definitely going to help. So that's really it. Clearing excess glucose and reducing appetite. In terms of side effects, I feel nausea, constipation, bloating. Yeah, that's because it's slowing your gastric emptying. So maybe you should leverage motility support, digestive enzymes, ginger extract, something to keep the motility going to combat those symptoms. Maybe you should be on a much lower dose of GLP-1s. That's the thing. Everyone talks about titrating GLP-1s, but believe it or not, there's never been medical research or studies done on titrations, because that's not what you do for diabetics. GLP-1s were made for diabetics, not obese, lazy people. So like the whole titration discussion is strictly for lazy, obese people who can't control cravings, not medical applications. Imagine a diabetic just driving up their GLP-1s and crashing their fucking glucose all day. Like, that would be insane. That would be.
I just had this conversation with a family friend the other day. She was saying how her doctor had prescribed her tirzepatide, and basically week 1 she did 2.5, week 2 she did 5, week 3 she did 7.5, and I'm like, and she was like, I hated it. I felt nauseous, like I couldn't get out of the bed, and I was like, myself, for example, I've been taking retatrutide for 2-3 months now, just because it helps me with the cravings. It helps me. It helps me mentally.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly will stand by that. I've taken 1 milligram a week for 2 or 3 months now, and I have not changed the dosing whatsoever, and I still feel the same exact effects that I did the first time that I took it.
Yeah,
dude, I'm thinking I'm in the off season right now, and my food is high as shit. And I'm staying in a very good body composition while being where my food is at. And I've been experimenting with retatrutide, and I've been just doing 1/4 milligram every other day. And my appetite, I don't have appetite suppression. I'm the type of person where, dude, I don't need cheat meals. Like I enjoy food, but man, if I don't think about cheat meals often at all. Even on prep. And that's how I've always been, man. I grew up on a farm. I've never had a Twinkie in my entire life.
Yeah.
I swear to God. No, so it's like I've been that kid where I grew up eating, venison potato stew. My lunches was, turkey that we butchered the last week,
Sure.
With some side of rice. So that's kind of like built in me, but I've noticed that even if my girlfriend brings up, hey, do you want to go get, sushi tonight? I honestly, the thing in my brain that's like, yeah, Nick, there's room to put some sushi in your diet today. It's just not there.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
And I have to tell myself, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll go get sushi. But I've noticed, man, even with 1/4 milligram every other day, my food, dude, I'm a bodybuilder. My food has stayed the same for the past like 2 months. My food sources are practically the same, give or take some variances here and there. I've noticed my stool consistency change for the better
Mm-hmm.
within the first week. And I'm attributing this to the Reta TrueTide because nothing else has changed.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't even been a full week on my cycle right now, and I'm on 350 mgs of test right now and 300 mgs of Primo. That's all I'm on.
Yeah.
And going to have zero effect on my gastric emptying. It's going to have zero effect on my GI system.
Right.
You know, DHT can have an effect on the GI system, blah, 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 whatever. But to the effect that my stools are better consistency, better regularity. I'm not like TMI. I can't even tell you like the last time I've, woken up and had a bloated stomach or been farting right off the bat in the morning.
Yeah.
And before I even brought this up on the podcast, for the past week and a half, I've been trying to think to myself, once I really started to notice it, what other things have changed that could be attributing to this? What other factors? What are the variables? And I can only narrow it down to the Reta.
Yeah.
And I feel so much better. My sleep I've had a side effect with my sleep, but it's a kind of a good side effect where I wake up with a lot of energy right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm waking up, even if I get 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, I wake up and I feel ready and I feel rested.
Yeah.
So I know that there has been some reported side effects with dose dependent on Reta with insomnia.
Yeah.
And that's something I was kind of afraid of going into it, but I haven't had that. I haven't had clients experience that either.
I think that comes down to their neurotransmitter health prior to the retatrutide. But we all know you're going to respond differently to drugs depending on what's going on in the background. But to that point, I've seen the exact same thing, whether it be with myself or with other patients. While GI symptoms are common at high doses, they're also seeing people heal their GI symptoms, inflammation modulation, bloating way down. My opinion is that's all upper GI, gallbladder, liver function, and that's where it's coming from. So I've seen the same thing too. I have people who say their Crohn's and celiac has never been better since they started a GLP-1. So it's not definitive, what someone's going to experience, but to that point, starting at a very low dose, we basically microdose GLP-1s for everyone to limit those side effects and do it like 2 to 3 times a week versus one bolus dose a week. So that limits the side effects, that limits the roller coaster of blood sugar and insulin. And then, like I said, if needed, leveraging some digestive support in the background at the same time. Now, the other side effects we hear about a lot is like now they're talking about muscle wasting and losing their eyesight and stuff. That's not coming from the peptide. That's coming from the fact that you're eating 600 calories a day and not working out. It's sedentary lifestyle, 0 calories. You're going to lose your bone and muscle integrity. It has nothing to do with the peptide.
The peptide isn't a Band-Aid for your lifestyle.
They are gaining muscle. It's not a muscle wasting drug. Your actions are muscle wasting.
I tell this to people all the time. It's like, I personally haven't used semaglutide with any of my clients. I prefer using Reta TrueTide or
semaglutide's the most side effects.
Yeah, but I hear from like family members or lifestyle people where they're like, yeah, man, I started getting semaglutide Ozempic face. And it's like, well, dude, literally just what Matt said. It's because you're not fucking eating. It's like, it's the fact that we've gotten to a place in society where we talked about this last week, dude. Peptides, people's own prophylactic approach to peptides is becoming like big pharma putting Band-Aids on side effects of one medication, and it's like, Matt, last week somebody asked us a question on our podcast where, hey, any peptides that you would recommend for acne? And I thought to myself, I'm like, why are we jumping to peptides for acne? Like, dude, if we start deploying peptides, just like, how big pharma just puts mask over mask over mask over all these side effects from medications, then we're no better than big pharma. Like, first off, like Taylor said last week, the first thing you approach, hey, how's your hygiene?
Right.
And then, once you break down hygiene and once you break down food intake, okay, let's look at your liver. Let's look at your gut, all these things. But people are like, no, I want to take AOD 405, 10, 4. Like, what?
We're in
Yeah.
a world of quick fixes, whether that be Adderall for a test, steroids to build muscle, this peptide to lose fat. Everyone's just looking for like the next thing to leverage so they don't have to actually put in effort. And what they're not realizing is these are tools in your toolbox, not a replacement for effort. These enhance your efforts. It's not replacing your efforts. And to that point, it's all about needs analysis. It's all about whether or not you're going to benefit. If you already have chronic constipation, do not take a GLP-1 because chances are it's not going to be.
It's going to get worse.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good result. Yeah. So like fix the constipation first, then leverage the GLP-1. We have people come to clinic all the time asking about weight loss drugs, but then we see their report. They have like 0 sex hormones, thyroid dysregulation, cortisol through the roof. It's like, yo, even if you take that, you're going to be wasting $600 a month, not seeing results. Let's fix all this and then work together to microdose that with supplement support in place, and I guarantee you results. And those are people who need like 40 pounds.
Yeah, I had a guy yesterday who he paid me for a year of coaching 3 months ago. Eating like 30, his diet's like 3,200 calories a day. He's a 240-pound male, and he texted me yesterday, hey, what are your thoughts on tirzepatide for fat loss? And I'm like, well, I think it's incredible, but like I also think that you haven't checked in the past 3 months and you haven't followed a diet since you paid me. So like, why would we deploy something when you're not even following the plan to begin with? So, but yeah, that's something I'm sure we could talk about all day. Matt, I have a question for you. Why do you think it is that we are seeing the metabolic health in 25-year-olds that we probably would have seen in 50-year-olds from the last generation?
Great question. I think it's a combination of things. I think one of the issues with our society and even like our current health administration is we're too focused on singular detriments instead of looking at the full picture of accumulative detriments. So I think when we look at accumulative detriments to society over the past 30 years, we have to respect or at least acknowledge toxic burden, environmental toxins. Our water is polluted, our air is polluted, our soil is polluted, our food is polluted. Pesticides, antibiotics, all of our food is bad. And so all of us are at a heightened level of toxic burden just from the baseline air, water, food. Then you add in other burdens that can happen in society, like mold toxicity, reactivated viruses, Lyme disease, gut infections. All those are accumulating burdens. Then you add in social media and the modern demands of being an American and the expectations that you should be making 7 figures and taking care of your kids and doing this and doing that. And these just outrageous delusional expectations of what we should all be doing on a day-to-day basis and where we should be in life. And this huge comparison act that we're all guilty of, this huge comparison act of life. I think all those things are accumulating, and that's led to hormone and metabolic decline at much earlier ages than we used to see. At the same time, our healthcare system, instead of highlighting it, has been like, nah, you guys are crazy. It's not happening. Gaslighting us for 10, 15, 20 years that it's not real. And so like all those things I think are accumulating. We see guys having low T in their mid-20s. We see girls having significant hormone dysfunction at 17. These things are happening. And I think it's all about the accumulative detriments. I think everyone can benefit from looking at their body and the idea of stress in a different lens. It's not so much one singular stress. It's the fact that we all have a stress bucket. And once our stress bucket accumulates to a point of overflow, that's disease and dysfunction. So it's not about being zero stress. It's about keeping your bucket at an appropriate level that your body can function properly. And that's
Well done.
person to person. A kid who experienced extreme trauma at 8 years old and had Lyme disease and had all these things is not going to be the same at 25 as someone who didn't experience those things. So
And a lot of people who had that trauma at 8 years old likely, yeah, a lot of people who had that trauma at 8 years old early in life maybe didn't grow up in a good home environment, probably had some mold in their house, you know, like all of those things like are leading up to, yeah,
Dude, I've
100%.
seen blood work from, I coach quite a few military personnel, men and women, and law enforcement. You know, and I'm very pro law enforcement, pro military. That's my background, what I grew up in with my family. But it's really hard to, bro, the amount of the stress. Okay, people think that stress you can just change it yourself. And yes, you can modulate your stress to some degree by supplementation, behaviors, lifestyle, etc. But man, it's stress is such a huge factor on our health, and it's crazy because almost every person that I coach, bodybuilder or lifestyle client in the military or law enforcement, has chronically elevated cortisol and has their thyroid is starting to show down regulation. TSH is low as shit. And it's one of those things where they just go to the VA or they go to their general practitioner and be like, all right, here's some level thyroxine, or, you know, you're like all this stuff. And it's the Band-Aid effect of everything. And it's like, okay, yes, somebody may have grown up in a family, like let's say it's before they entered the military, they grew up in a good family, etc. But the military breeds you for success with high stressful situations. Your body adapts to that. You get out of the military, your body is not going to adapt out of it. It is going to stay in it. Your brain, that's how your brain has been fixated or has been changed. And that can't just be prophylactically fixed with pharmaceuticals all the time. And a lot of it has to come from lifestyle, counseling, therapy, stuff like that. And I'm dealing with a guy right now where, I mean, he's military, he's in the Marines, and I pulled him out of prep because he was 8 weeks out looking fantastic. He had a shot at his pro card this year, but he's going through on the edge of divorce with his wife. You know, like, first off, dude, that's stressful enough the way it is. You're already dealing with all the stress from the military and your job as a Marine. On top of that, in contest prep, your lifestyle of being a Marine and your marriage is not worth a fucking pro card.
No.
You know, so like, let's first get your marriage in check, man. Then we're gonna deal with how you're dealing with the stuff going on in the military. Then maybe next year we'll put you back into prep if we can figure something out.
It's funny though, because those military and police, and like because of that stress and because they can endure so much, they're always the best athletes.
Always do.
They're always the ones that have the
they don't their detriment is not mental motivation. Their body gives up before their mind and nervous system give up. And that's why they're so effective in those roles. But unfortunately, you can only push through in bodybuilding so much because you rely on your body's response. And I've seen the same thing. You know, it's funny because I'll like work with all different walks of life, and I'll have people be like, I work in the tech world, and that's the most stressful job imaginable. I'm like, I've seen body cam footage of cops getting guns pulled on them. Trust me, I can assure you, tech is not the most stressful environment to be in on a day-to-day basis.
Dude,
but yeah, you know, I think what's helpful to everyone is respecting stress, understanding survival adaptations, understanding that all these things are ancient programs in our body that have nothing to do with modern day life, but our body cannot update our programming. So we have to work with the ancient programming we have and shift our expectations. Anything is possible. Anything is not possible in 1 year. So it's like, You know, make that 1 year plan a 5 year plan, and you just tripled your chances of success. It's just the expectation of what can all be done at once that everyone is kind of getting wrong, myself included. I have to talk to myself about that all the time. Of like, nah, dude, there's too much going on for that.
Dude, while we're on this topic, I kind of want to switch gears to some gut health stuff.
Sure.
Because we all know that how important stress is, you know, we have to respect stress, but how influential cortisol and stress is on your gut health.
Yeah.
So I had a question for you, man, directly. You know, when it comes to weight loss resistance and metabolic dysfunction per se, however we want to phrase that, how can someone's gut health be a key factor, you know, with these issues, with metabolic dysfunction, with weight loss resistance, even if their thyroid values are in check, but their hormones are also in check, but they also think that their gut is completely fine, that they think that they don't have gut issues. How can you break it down in layman's terms for that individual that swears their gut is fine, their labs look pretty good, but there's still issues arising?
Sure. So there's a couple pieces there. It's never black and white. There are genetic phenomenons all the time. I have seen blood work that was horrid, where I was like, you're going to die in 6 months. And that girl got top 2 at the Olympia 6 months later. Granted, since then, she's never competed again and did have a lot of health detriment, but she disproved my theory that her body was going to stop responding. So outside looks great, inside looked terrible. But we just have to keep in mind when we talk about genetic differences or the people who are very genetically inclined, part of those genetics is stress resiliency. So we can assume that the Olympians at the top of their game have better stress resiliency than the rest of us. That's part of genetic gifts. So we just have to remember that we're not all made equally. The other thing is when stress is high or cortisol is high, point is moot. Doesn't matter what sex hormones look like, doesn't matter what thyroid hormones look like. Survival adaptations are happening. And that's what we need to appreciate is that the human body wasn't made for 2025, it was made for caveman times. So stress is seen as a threat on survival. So therefore, survival adaptations are going to happen. And let's think about some of those survival adaptations. A great one is blood sugar and insulin resistance. This has a lot less to do with food than people think and a lot more to do with stress. When your body activates fight or flight, one of the first things that it does is it raises blood sugar as a fuel source for survival. So it's literally taking glucose out of the muscles and maintaining it in the bloodstream until the stress goes away. But guess what? As modern day Americans, the stress never goes away. So the blood sugar never goes down. So then your pancreas starts overproducing insulin to combat this blood sugar that never goes down. Kind of like an alcohol tolerance, our body develops a tolerance for its own insulin, and it's getting less and less effective. If this continues for 10, 15, 20 years, that's type 2 diabetes, my friends. Your body has stopped responding to insulin, and now you need to inject synthetic or exogenous insulin. This could all be changed if we got rid of the stress and inflammation. It has nothing to do with food or very little to do with food. I know people who've been keto for 5 years that still have high blood sugar. You know, so the big focus needs to be inflammation and stress response. Same thing with gut health. So you guys will know this because of what you experience when you train. So when your parasympathetic nervous system, or I should say sympathetic nervous system, is activated, fight or flight, blood flow shifts from the gut into the brain and the limbs. That's to help you fight or flee a situation. Think about getting a pump in the gym. Why don't we eat while we train? Because everything's shut down because blood flow is here and we have a pump. Same idea in everyday life. If we're hyper stressed and cortisol is elevated, our gut function is not functioning properly. We're not producing enough bile salts. We're not producing enough enzymes and stomach acid to break down and utilize these foods. That leads to nutrient malabsorption.
stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That leads to nutrient malabsorption. That leads to waste sitting and festering, which then leads to bacteria developing. Then we have leaky gut, inflammation, bacteria developing, and we're holding waste. The human body can hold up to 18 pounds of waste. So if we're like constipated for a week, there could be 4 or 5 pounds of waste in our gut. And as a prep client, we're like, I'm not losing weight or I'm gaining weight. What am I going to do? Increase cardio, increase fat loss drug, adding more stress, making the gut issues fucking worse, you know, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. So the gut health is caused by stress, but then transpires to become its own stress that can't go away, you know, and that chronic inflammation, shift in gut microbiome is now shifting insulin sensitivity, neurotransmitter, hormone function, etc. It's all kind of downhill from there.
Because people are only looking for symptoms of poor gut health. They're only looking for the typical ones: bloating, diarrhea, constipation. They're not realizing everything on a micro level. They're looking at a macro level.
Right.
You know, they don't think about the importance of motility. And if we're not being motile and everything's sitting in there, just all that waste, the bad bacteria is building up. Good bacteria is getting worse. Okay.
Absolutely.
And they don't look at that as, oh, that's not a variable of why I can't lose my belly fat.
Right.
And then at the same time, you tell them, hey, we just got blood work done. We just looked at the variables that we are first addressing. Okay. We know that lifestyle stress needs to be addressed, and we're working on that. And thyroid's good. Hormones seem to be good, but now we need to get a GI map done. We need to see how we can attack this. But then we're always met with pushback of, but my gut's fine. I'm going to the bathroom 1 or 2 times, a day. Maybe I'm going to the bathroom once a day. But they don't, dude, the amount of GI maps that I've read with a great physique, but a shitty gut is insane.
And I can touch on that real quick. So there are cases of asymptomatic situations. First, we have to remember that our medical system and society has normalized dysfunction. People will be taking Tums every night, but say, I don't have GI issues. You know, as long as I avoid 10 food groups, I don't have any issues. I've had people tell me that their gut is fine and they're eating fucking carnivore. And it's like, dude, come on. There is that situation where people don't realize they're unhealthy because society has normalized it. Then in terms of asymptomatic cases, you guys have probably seen this if you look at GI maps. So most symptoms come from what's called dysbiosis, which means an imbalance of good and bad bacteria, high levels of bad, low levels of good. There are situations where people can have high levels of bad bacteria, but also high levels of good, which means there's no imbalance. When you don't have an imbalance, you don't have as many symptoms. So you can be completely asymptomatic, yet you have a parasite, you have 6 different infections driving up autoimmune, driving up inflammatory responses, hindering nutrient absorption, and you don't even know because you don't have symptoms. So, there's a few different aspects there. And another thing that I think more bodybuilders need to recognize is kidney function in terms of stress and peaking and what their physique looks like. So we know that the adrenals produce aldosterone, which controls fluid and electrolyte balancing. If cortisol is very high or very low, that's also going to affect aldosterone production. So you're already got a thin layer of water on you, and it's basically impossible to peak with that happening. So gut issues affecting water retention, cortisol issues affecting water retention, you're skewing your look, you think you're fatter than you actually are, and there's no possible way you're getting that off of you leveraging potassium and sodium, before a show. So that stress is going to hinder your physique and hinder your placement regardless of what you do. So it really is important to analyze the gut stress components, even if you aren't necessarily having gut symptoms. But keep in mind, low sex drive, hair loss, skin issues, mental health issues, insulin resistance. These can be symptoms of poor gut health that aren't directly tied to gut health.
Yep, for sure.
I love that answer,
Thank you.
man.
Yeah, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, we're coming up on the hour and 35-minute mark, so we don't want to hold you too long. But Matt, if you're down for it, we could probably talk for another hour and a half. So we could definitely get an episode 2 in, or another episode of this. But appreciate you so much for coming on today, man. This has been incredible. This is very, very, very cool just to hear your perspective on everything with the experience and the knowledge and everything that you have, obviously with what you do and what you've done, et cetera, et cetera. So, before we go, where can people find you at? Anything you want to, tell or promote or whatever the case may be, let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just want to say thanks again for you guys bringing me on, and be more than happy to do another episode. It's been a while since I've done some, real drug talks and stuff like that. So
yeah,
dive into some other topics. So as far as where people can reach me, my Instagram handle is Matt Bodytech. You can obviously get services through my clinic, Ryse HRT. If you have an inquiry and you want to email me versus social media, you can email me at matt@rzehrt.com.
Cool. Yeah, guys, if you are ever in need of anything functional related, anything like that, Matt is the man. He is the guy. One of the best in the industry for sure. And I also want to promote here a little bit too. The Pure Factor, we talked about this at the beginning of the episode, but Matt's supplement line is absolutely second to none. He mentioned this, but he doesn't. The profits aren't a necessity for him. They're not a need. He does this just because he genuinely helps people. I have an affiliation with his supplement company just because I wholeheartedly believe in everything that he does and every supplement that he has and is continuing to produce. So, guys, definitely be sure to check out Pure Factor Formulations. And we appreciate everyone for tuning into this episode. And we hope to have Matt back here again very soon. So, appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. See you, Matt.